We are live now for the NASCAR Betting Preview Show as we get you set, locked and loaded for Kansas this upcoming weekend. One of the best races we've seen so far this season, and it's time to make some money once again. We got best bets, prop plays, expert analysis, and a special guest. Stay tuned in and get in the chat. It's the NASCAR Betting Preview Show. Welcome in, everyone. It is the NASCAR Betting Preview Show, and we come to you live with a very special edition because I'm Tito Patino, your host. I'm joined by Phil from Full Tank with Phil, Ryan from Win the Race, and none other than the legend himself, Dale Tanhart, joins us tonight on the show. Dale, we'll start with you. How's it going? How you been? How did you do last weekend in a crazy race that was Bristol?
Yeah, hey, great to see you guys again. Great to be back. And last week was, I guess, okay. If you bet on Kyle Larson, you had something to be happy about when most people were not happy about the race itself. But yeah, I did bet on Kyle Larson. I had a good Christopher Bell top 5 and a Chase Elliott top 10. So it was a good, modest type of win. You know, no crazy Chris Buescher 50-1 type of wins from Watkins Glen or any big, 10-1 or better type wins that we see every now and then. And I know you guys know all about those type of wins, but been pretty good. Trying to get back on track on staying in the green on NASCAR bets. We've had 2 good weekends in a row. So hopefully we can continue that into Kansas, which has been a very, very exciting racetrack, not just for betting purposes, but for all race fans to enjoy a good show this weekend.
Definitely. And Ryan, now to you here, we go to you because you had boots on the ground. You were there live at the track. Dale mentioned it was a tough one in terms of a Kyle Larson domination race, but from your eyes, how was the race as a whole there in person?
Well, you know what's funny is that Jeff Gluck comes out with the poll and scores it was like 75% no or somewhere in that area. And what's funny is I've been to 2 races since 2022, and the 2 races I attended were number 55 and 56 on that short track list, Martinsville Spring 22 and this Bristol race. So if you find out I'm going to a race, just sell your tickets immediately. I'll warn everybody ahead of time next time. But beyond that, the track is so beautiful that even regardless of what I saw, I will be going back. So it was awesome. The Xfinity race was so much fun. The Cup race was too. I mean, the whole experience was just great. Flyover was sweet with the sick, like huge bomber thing going over the stadium. It was just unreal. So yeah, it was fun. Good group of guys. We had a blast. We were on Larson too, and then I was on all the head-to-heads fading Reddick, so that worked out really well as well. So we all won some money. We enjoyed the race, and I will be going back to Bristol.
Hell yeah, that's what we like to hear. Bristol, to me, I was there too last year, and it was such an awesome racetrack to be. It feels like you're sitting in like a football stadium, seeing cars go around in a circle, essentially, right? Because of the way that track is presented. Now, Phil, to you here, because I know we were talking Toyotas earlier last week and everything like that, but we were on Larson, and one of the parlays we did cook up, I believe, in terms of the head-to-head matchups, we were talking about Ryan Blaney or Chase Elliott over Ryan Blaney, and then another one there with Byron over Reddick. To you, though, personally, how'd you do last weekend, and did you enjoy the race despite it being, the tough one with Kyle Larson there?
Well, yeah, I mean, great to be here as always, guys, and always great to have Dale on with us, and excited for this week. But last week, yeah, watching the race, I'll tell you what, I was happy as a clam. I was on a golf outing, so I was shit-faced, and had my own TV just for the race, while college football was on the other stuff. And yeah, I mean, we had Larson for a top 5 at plus 100. That felt good. Obviously, made out like a bandit there. And those head-to-heads, were great. The Byron over Reddick played out. Elliott over Blaney, I was not feeling good about. Blaney looked great in practice and had some really good times, but hey, Elliott got the job done for us. And then I added a head-to-head on race day, and I got a lot of the guys on our golf trip on it, Wallace over Briscoe. And that they were closer together than I would have liked for most of the race, but Wallace brought it home for us. So, yeah, good day for the card overall. And yeah, I guess we'll have to keep our eyes out next time Ryan's going to a race. We'll have to smash like the heavy favorite and just assume it's going to be a snooze fest. But I had fun time and looking forward to another mile and a half coming up here.
Awesome. Yeah, and this track and this weekend gets me hyped, gets me excited. Before we dive into the playoff picture, a little bit rapid fire as well, and all of the outright bets we have for this one, along with props and everything in between. I got to give a special shout out to everyone in the chat. Marcus was first once again. He's got an insane streak going, so shout out to him. Appreciate him being in the chat there. He's asking everyone who's going to win at Kansas. He thinks Christopher Bell, and hey, maybe I do too. Stay tuned for that one. Kush there in the chat saying home track for Kush. That could mean big things for Christopher Bell. Then we got Brian up here saying taking the Reddick approach to Bell, and he has to win eventually, right? And I think that's honestly fair because it's been a little bit for them there. Love everyone in the chat chiming in here. Kyle, what's up? Oh, who we betting? Well, you're about to find out. And Big Ross as well, talking about Bristol there last weekend. All right, guys, now it's time for this segment in the playoff picture, but I'm also going to combine this with rapid fire. So stick with me here. When we take a look at this playoff picture now, when we go from 16 drivers to 12 and seeing who's, in the playoffs still, as we saw MTJ get knocked out, Keselowski get knocked out, Ty Gibbs, obviously, and then Harrison Burton. There's some surprising names in this. Austin Cindric, Chase Briscoe being some of them. For your rapid fire questions, it's also going to be the playoff picture segment here. And I want you guys to help me out here. Who are we going to be taking in a head-to-head matchup to perform better than the other? So, Phil, we'll start with you in this question here. Kyle Larson or Denny Hamlin? Who performs better in this round? You're muted there. You're muted.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted because all I was saying was that's tough. I'm going to go with Larson. I know we got Talladega coming up, but they're both pretty much a wash here, and I don't know how specifically they do at the Roval, but I would probably tend to side with Larson on a road course from years history. So I'll go with Larson. I'll also say that he's the only driver that he has a mulligan. Looking at the points, the rest of them, they can't fuck up. So I'll go with Larson just because I think he's going to perform really well this week, and the Roval, I think he'll probably outshine Denny.
Okay. Like that one there. It's a battle between those two drivers that we'll probably see at Kansas like we have once before. Ryan, now to you. I'm going to give you Tyler Reddick against Christopher Bell. Who do you think performs better in this round between those two Toyotas?
Wow, that's a tough one for this round. Man, I'm kind of feeling Christopher Bell this weekend, and then love him at Roval, kind of a wash at Talladega, although I would expect him to be better than Reddick there. I'll pick Christopher Bell for this round.
Okay, I like it.
Don't really have any hard-hitting analysis for that because they're so freaking close. I mean, if I had to pick, I'll pick Bell.
No, it's fair. And this is rapid fire anyway, so you don't really, it's just really, to me, seeing who's in the playoff picture, trying to decipher which cars at the certain point. Okay, now, Dale, to you. We talked about some Chevys. We talked about some Toyotas, but we haven't talked any Fords yet. Ryan Blaney against Joey Logano. This one could be an easy one with how much better Blaney has been than Logano this season. But to you, in this round specifically, who outperforms who when it comes to these two drivers?
Yeah, you gave me the easiest one. I'd be shocked if Joey Logano, from a consistency standpoint, outperforms Ryan Blaney. Now, that could be wiped away in a flash if he wins Talladega. He just won Atlanta a couple weeks ago. But when you look at the mile and a half program, Ryan Blaney over the course of the Gen 7 era has been miles ahead of his teammates, other than I think a Logano win Vegas fall of 2022. But Blaney, and you could argue, I think even Ryan Blaney said this, that their program is better than it was at this time last year when he made a run at the championship. So I got to go Blaney. I think he's due not only at a track like Kansas this weekend, but at Talladega. I mean, winless at the super speedways in 2024. It's hard to imagine he stays winless with 6 super speedways on the schedule now. So there's a bug in my face. I got to go with Ryan Blaney. And you consider the Roval. Feels kind of like a toss-up, but just from these first 2 tracks alone, I just think the performance collectively has been better for Ryan Blaney all year long. If Joey Logano doesn't get bailed out at Nashville by all the chaos that happened, who knows if he would have even made the playoffs.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that one was an easy one for you because I'm a big guy on Blaney here too moving forward. But to me, I'm going to give myself one. It's going to be Austin Cindric or Daniel Suarez. I'm going Cindric here as I think he may advance from this round. And I only think that's kind of crazy to say because of no one expected them to even make the playoffs. Now, they did obviously win at WWT, but since then and in this playoffs thus far, one of the best guys in terms of consistency, in terms of getting points throughout each race to just continue to advance, continue to have a good cushion over the playoff bubble. We look at the tracks like Dale mentioned, Talladega, Roval. We're going to these places where Austin Cindric, when we talked about him before, right? He was a 1 or 2 trick pony in terms of super speedways and road course racing. Well, here you go, Austin. Let's see you advance to the round of 8 after this round. But that'll do it for our playoff picture mixed with the rapid fire questions there. Appreciate everyone in the chat chiming in as well. Shout out to Hofstra Club Baseball. That's that alumni here for me. That hits deep. Appreciate Anthony Spielman in the chat too. Double mullets. Me and Dale rocking it. Hell yeah. So now let's move on, guys, to the ride or fade. And this one could be big here because when we're going now to Kansas, everything is in play. We saw how crazy this race was earlier this past season, earlier in the year, rather, when we had a photo finish, the closest in NASCAR history. And which guys are you thinking in this one, Phil? We'll start with you that we could ride or potentially fade in this one. And what could be a crazy race?
Well, yeah. So I'll just call out. I'm when I throw some stats out here, I'm looking at the last 5 at Kansas, the next gen car at this track, and then I'm also looking at the 4.5 miles plus Michigan from this year, as far as apples to apples go. So this one, we talked about it on the show. Martin Truex Jr. and just the dismal season he's had since Kansas, like last time we were in Kansas. If you thought that he didn't really give a fuck before, now that he's out of the playoffs, I can't see them like really putting anything together here. Other than the fact that they're just decent at Kansas, kind of like muscle memory type of deal. So when I saw the odds come out, I saw on Bovada, trying to find a dance partner. Who can I fade Truex with that would make any sort of sense? And how about a driver in Chase Elliott who has gotten stronger finishes every single time we've been here in the next gen car? 11.2 average finish. He's got a top 5, 3 top 10s, 29th to 11th, 7th, 6th, and 3rd. Like he just keeps getting stronger and stronger at Kansas. I know Truex is decent here, but it's really, to me, he's out to lunch. He's already thinking about, retirement and drinking beers with Dale Jr. most likely. In 2024, Chase Elliott has the 3rd best average finish on those comp tracks, 7.6. He's 5 for 5, finishing the top 15, and he's 4-1 head-to-head against Martin Truex Jr. on these comp tracks so far this year. And that's despite having not as good of a speed rating here. So, and Big Ross calling it out. If Truex wins at Kansas after being eliminated, that would be ridiculous. Like my mind would just melt because like, what were you doing? Like, how could you put a race together that would win? So minus 115 on Bovada, Chase Elliott over Martin Truex Jr. Continuing the fade Truex train, and we'll see how it goes. Plus what we called about earlier, Elliott getting some momentum, 2nd place last week. I see them starting to come on strong.
Yeah, I agree with that there. I think I will say shout out to Big Ross again there because that would be hilarious. And that is something that when I was doing my midweek prep or honestly right after Bristol, I was like, okay, who just pops off in my mind for Kansas. And it was Truex who came in my mind first because he was in position to win that race, had the caution not come out. But they did get a little fortunate with some strategy and everything else that came into play there. Ryan, for you guys that win the race, what are you guys thinking about in terms of any head-to-head matchups that we could potentially ride or fade in this one?
So the one that I took was Bell over Byron. So are we doing where we'd ride or fade Phils as well, or no? We're skipping that this week.
Well, hey, I mean, yeah, you could let me know. Let me know.
Well, no, I didn't want to be a downer, but
he's gonna crush me.
I would.
Yeah, there we go.
I would be on the Truex side there. I'm a sucker for him. I know Dale's probably fucking really not on the Truex side there, unless he's visiting prison. But I just can't. I got to just follow the speed and how I rank everything out before the race. And I really like in this package, we do like adjusted speed, which is, takes out all the shit, track position, things like that. And I have Truex as one of the fastest cars. Obviously, Larson and Hamlin are the top two. And then I have Truex shortly after that. So, I mean, I just would like to think that this shitty finish streak is going to end eventually for him. I think he's great here at Kansas, and I think he's going to show up fast. It's just a matter of, can this guy actually get a finish? And I know in a head-to-head, that you're looking at that, and that's why you took Elliott, but I would just have to follow my ranks and do Truex. And if we're not doing that part of the segment, I didn't mean to jump in. I don't want to poo-poo anything. I just thought,
No, now we are. Now we are.
All right.
So, all right. So, okay, we'll stick with you now, though, and see what you have to offer us, if anything, there. And then we'll go to Dale and see if he's going to ride either one of your guys' picks there, and then see what he's got as well.
All right, cool. So I was going to take Bell over Byron. I think it's like minus 125 is the best number you can get out there right now. I'd gotten it minus 120 earlier in the week, so not much different than it is now. Not too much hard hitting analysis here. I mean, they're both strong in this, package in particular, and on this track type in particular. But in the Gen 7 races at Kansas, Bell's 4-1 in this matchup, and the only time he lost was when he wrecked out. So he's consistently beating Byron at this track in this car. And one thing he does really well here is qualify really well. So I think, I don't like to bank on that, but it's been pretty consistent. I mean, if he qualifies up front, he's going to start with that track position, and he's been fast enough to hold it all day. And I think that's one of the main reasons he's been beating Byron here. So yeah, again, I don't have much here. I have Bell ranked higher in my pre-practice and qualifying ranks, which takes all that true performance ranks, the adjusted speed, all that stuff, and kind of sorts it out. Also, the track form, Bell's higher than Byron. So with that, and he's 4-1. The only time he lost was wrecking out. I had to take Bell in this matchup.
Okay. All right. Now, Dale, to you. I'll give a little recap for you. So Phil has Chase Elliott over Martin Truex Jr., and then Ryan has Christopher Bell over William Byron in this one. Now, as Ryan alluded to, we don't expect you to go into jail here. So are you riding with Phil? And then also, what do you think about Bell over Byron there for Ryan's play? Oh, you're muted there. Yes, here.
Got it. Figured it out. I love the Bell over Byron play just for the raw statistic, like Ryan had said, the 5-1 in this at Kansas. So I like Christopher Bell in the spot a lot, not just from that, but in an outright position as well. And I'm sure we'll get into that later. But the other matchup was Elliott versus Truex. I hate to say it, I kind of lean Martin Truex here, just because if that race plays out the way until Kyle Busch has his weekly spin, Martin Truex might win that race because he was putting the pressure on Denny Hamlin, who was going to be short on fuel. So it's not something I'm going to bet on either end, because what I like about Chase Elliott, if I'm going to play devil's advocate, is the fact that he doesn't usually qualify super well, kind of runs middle of the pack and just sneaks his way up towards the front. And Bristol was a prime example of that. Third here at Kansas earlier in the spring. As Phil had mentioned, better and better as the years have gone on at this racetrack for Chase Elliott. I'd go with Truex just because I think collectively Toyota, between 23XI and Joe Gibbs Racing, has just been better here as a program since the beginning of the Gen 7 era. And I'd like to give my own rider fade.
Yeah.
Denny Hamlin versus Kyle Larson. Give me Denny Hamlin. These guys they just trade blows back and forth, especially at this racetrack. Denny Hamlin kind of has some mojo from surviving two things. He survived a first-round exit, and he survived the FedEx scheme. The FedEx scheme has been horrible to him in 2024. So the fact that he survived those two things when the pressure was on makes me feel like there's a little bit of mojo returned in the 11 camp. And all he does here is finish first or second. And in the spring, until that caution comes out, don't know if he would have made it on fuel, but he may have finished first or second if it had played out naturally. But Denny Hamlin is just awesome here. Kyle Larson is too. They trade back and forth. I like the mojo with Denny Hamlin, Toyota at Kansas. So give me Denny Hamlin in that head-to-head matchup are my ride of the weekend.
I'm riding that too, and specifically because after this first round from Denny Hamlin, we saw them narrowly squeak by. Like you said, they survived that first round, which shouldn't have been the case, but it was because they didn't come out aggressive in the early races that we saw. Well, now I know for sure that 11 team in the entirety is going to come out firing, going to be aggressive, and make up for the points that they didn't get in that early on in that first round at places like Atlanta and Watkins Glen, like we saw there. Phil and Ryan, Phil, we'll start with you here. Are you riding that from Dale? I mean, because also, too, when we see those two guys, right, and Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson, Denny is 6-0 in all time in finishing 1-2 against Kyle Larson. So with that stat, too, I feel like it's got to be Denny here.
Yeah, so here's the thing about this matchup. I think this is super interesting because on Caesars, this debuted at plus 120 for Denny. And you blinked, and people just crushed it. And then all of a sudden, he was minus 120 as a favorite. Now you could still get him as like plus 100 on other spots. I think Bovada still had him at plus 100. But if you like this bet, I would say 100% wait. All the books are still going to have it. The books that have it now, this is a marquee matchup. But Denny struggles in qualifying at Kansas specifically. I think in the last 5, his best qualifying effort was 8th. And on the mile and a half this year, also not good. So I think we could see that start to go back the other way. Get him at plus money, and yes, I'm in. Because Kyle, not as good at Kansas. I mean, they are so close together, but and then this season, it's like checkers or wreckers for him. 2 wins, but also like 2 top 20s. Whereas Denny is very much more consistent. So I like this, especially when you can get it for the number, plus money and maybe better.
Ryan, I need to know what when the race is saying in terms of the data analytics stats and everything when it comes to these two, top tier drivers heading into such a great racetrack like we've seen them perform in Kansas.
Well, Win the Race is actually split here. We got Greg on Hamlin and I'm on Larson, but it's strictly because the numbers. It's exactly what Phil said. Greg went and got Hamlin early. I wasn't around to grab that. Larson eventually got to even, just plus 100. And so when I saw that and Denny was minus 120, I took Larson for plus 100. And it's like, I'm really not surprised if either guy wins this matchup, obviously. But I think when like a lot of people say, well, Hamlin's better here. Well, it's like, yeah, that's if you take Larson's whole career with like Chip Ganassi as well. But if you look at just his Hendricks races here, he's won 2 out of the 7 races. I mean, he's finished in the last 6, first, second, ace, second, fourth, first. And I know Denny's always up there too. But if you look at just his Hendrick races here at Kansas, this dude is unreal dominant, has led way more laps. I mean, he is just always out front. So you look at like Greg's front runners on Win the Race. I always like to look at that just to see like how often these guys are running up front. And Larson's stats are just stupid. I mean, if he takes if we just take 23 and 24, Kansas, Vegas, Darlington, Homestead, that's the data set that Greg likes to use the most for Kansas. If you look at the percentage of laps he ran inside the top 5, Larson's ran over 80% of his laps inside the top 5. The next best is Byron at 50%. So he's 30% higher. It's like the guy's just unbelievable at this track type. So I don't know. I mean, if Hamlin goes out and wins the race, I'm not surprised. But Win the Race, we're split because we both just took whatever the best number was.
Okay. All right. Guys, let us know in the chat who you're thinking, Denny Hamlin or Kyle Larson. I feel like this is such a great potential race to see them go to war together. Whenever we can see a Larson domination race or a Denny domination race within themselves, it's okay. But when it's those two drivers being the class of the field, as they have been most times thus far this season, that's what gets me excited. And I feel like that's what we can see this weekend, as the guys have mentioned. Big Ross saying Larson has run 618 more lead laps than anyone this year. He could easily have another couple wins. Definitely true. I feel like if anyone leaves potential wins on the board, it is the 5 car, because if he's not winning, he's wrecking. Love that take there, Big Ross. And then saying obviously helped last week, but that's still a huge number for sure. I mean, that is a large number of laps led so far this season for Kyle Larson. And then Brian also saying Larson value is now, Denny is post qualifying in his opinion. And I think that echoes what Phil was saying as well. And that is the smart play, I would say, too, because of where Denny's sort of struggled in qualifying, or at least been not as strong as the Chevy/Hendrick drivers that we've seen so far this season. All right, now, guys, as we head to position props, also want to shout out to the chat here. Appreciate everyone commenting. If you guys have any questions, comments on any position props, now would be the time. If you want to know anything, want any analysis from any of us here, or our take on who we think you guys should potentially bet on or pick in this one, let us know in the chat now. Dale, we'll start with you here for any position props you may have in this one for Kansas.
I don't know why that keybind won't work, but it's okay. I love Team Spire. I love Spire all weekend long. I think you check out BetMGM, their top 10 lines for Hocevar, Justin Haley. Yep. Don't forget, Justin Haley's now in the 7 car. I actually can feel confident when I bet on him now. No disrespect, because Rick Ware's had some good runs, but that 7 car has been fast, man. We've seen multiple times this year where Corey LaJoie has had top 10 or top 15 speed early in a race and then got himself into trouble. Carson Hocevar at all sorts of racetracks has had a lot of top 15s, few top 10s mixed in. And Zane Smith has had a really good, or a better second half to his season versus where he started, because it was an abysmal start for that 71 team. He's kind of turned it around. We're hearing the rumblings about Spire becoming basically a tier 1 Hendrick team. You get Justin Haley on board. I just love the energy with Spire, and BetMGM right now has really, really strong top 10 odds on those guys. Someone like Hocevar, maybe I'd take early because he's had some glimpses of strong qualifying runs. Maybe Zane Smith and Justin Haley you could wait on until right before green flag. But I love their lines on top 10. Carson Hocevar plus 650, Justin Haley plus 850, and then Zane Smith plus 2,000, 20-1. So that's something that sticks out to me early in the week on positional props. We typically see a good bit of variance around the top 10, top 15 at Kansas. Guys like Ricky Stenhouse have had good runs here. Something about some of these Chevys that have some Hendrick power. Seems like they find a way to be in the mix. So I like the Spire camp all weekend long.
I love it. Now, Dale, I still have to just follow up real quick about that. Since we're talking about Spire and Justin Haley, what were your thoughts on the trade that we saw there? I mean, that was awesome to me to see a NASCAR trade mid-season between Justin Haley and Corey LaJoie. And like you said, the amount of now confidence that you see now with it being Justin Haley in the car rather than Corey LaJoie, I feel like is through the roof, like you mentioned.
Yeah, I think there's a stat out there somewhere about Justin Haley just running all the laps, and that's so important versus someone like Corey LaJoie who has speed but has just made a lot of mistakes. So I love that part of it too. Justin Haley's a guy that just finishes races. Kansas can be a chaotic track. And regarding the trade, yeah, the rare trade in NASCAR, I love it. I think things like this are cool that don't happen very often. I didn't even remember the one that happened in 2012. I think it was Regan Smith and Kurt Busch. I could be wrong on that one. And then 2003, Steve Park and Jeff Green. It's very, very easy to forget those type of deals when they happen. But when they do happen, you're kind of like, okay, interesting. It's a very unprecedented move. And it could be good for both parties because Corey LaJoie is kind of auditioning now. Rick Ware hasn't committed to him. They're definitely a better program than they've ever been in the Cup Series. And obviously everything I said about Spire bodes well for Justin Haley. So cool deal to me. The rare trade, it is NFL football season, so it kind of makes me feel it makes me feel like NASCAR is going a little more stick and ball with a little bit of everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, Phil, who are you thinking about position props wise? Any drivers here in this one that catch your eye?
Well, I mean, I love the long shots on those, and I think that makes a lot of sense. So that's going to be fun. I didn't really have those guys on the radar, but that's going to be fun on MGM because Haley's like 8-1, like you said. I like that a lot. I'm going to cheat a little bit. Brian gave me a little love in the chat earlier. He listened to a little bit of the pod earlier today, so he liked my my one top 10 play that I threw out there for Ross Chastain. You can get him at plus 120. It's not 8-1. It's not as sexy as that, but this is on Caesars. And the point that I was making on the podcast was, kind of the opposite of Truex. Like Chastain hasn't had any real reason to run, and he has been. He's been actually running pretty well if you're just setting the bar at top 10s. He's got 3 of the last 4 races finishing in the top 10 with 2 top 5s in there. So there's some sort of fire lit under his ass, I guess. And in the 2024 comp tracks that we're looking at, he's had a couple races where he didn't finish all that well, but he's got 2 top 10s in that comp track data set. And then at Kansas, 3 top 10s of the last 5, and he's got the 4th best average finish, 7th best driver rating. And the thing that I found interesting was there's only 4 drivers who are 5 for 5 finishing inside the top 20. Again, not hitting this bet, but still consistency is the key here. And for whatever reason, Chastain has been able to keep the car clean enough to run in the top 20. So he's getting that done, and he's 8th in speed ranking in the 2024 data set. So Chastain, he's 12th on Win the Race. So he's hovering right around that 10th place mark at plus 120. I think that this is a driver that's just going to be like, wow, where did he come from? It's like he's just taking up a spot. 9th place. I think what I said on the pod, he's going to run like 8th to 13th. And that puts you in the ball game at plus 120. So Chastain, finding myself on his camp this week.
Okay, Ross Chastain, love there. I feel like he also qualifies well, like you mentioned there. Like he's always up front there and potentially being in that spot. Ryan, what about you guys at Win the Race? Any position prompts that you guys have a little bit extra data at that pointing us in a certain direction here?
Yeah, I just took Bubba top 10 plus 100. Looking at the same data set, like, Greg's data set on front runners. Bubba's one of only 9 drivers running over 50% of his laps inside the top 10. So there's only 9 guys doing it over half the time. You're obviously going to want him running inside the top 10 most of the time if you want him to finish top 10, and he's been doing that. I know he went through a little rough stretch of finishes this year, but if you look at Bubba specifically at Kansas in this Gen 7 car, he's finished 10th, 1st, 4th, and then when he qualified 10th, he finished in like 30 something, but he had 2 crucial penalties that killed his day that day. And in my true performance ranks, I actually had him as the 5th best car. So he got a 10th place finish, 1st place, 4th place. I had him as the 5th best car. What worries me here is that him and Reddick just didn't show up in the spring race. I don't know. I got to go, I watched a little bit of it back, but I want to go like read some things and see if they said anything about it. Cause I think everyone and their brother expected 2311 to show up for Kansas in the spring, and they just were gone. Don't know what happened. So I don't know. 4 out of the 5 times he's been here, he's been excellent or even dominant one time. So yeah, even money for a top 10. He's done it 9 out of 17 races. So that's, again, a better percentage than the plus 100 you're getting in the sample set that we're looking at and Win the Race. So yeah, I'll take Bubba. Take my chances that they show up fast this time.
Yeah, that was crazy to see that they didn't show up with that much speed, like you mentioned earlier on this season, where they had the streak going of the 45 car winning at that specific racetrack for, I believe, 4 Kurt Busch. It was Bubba, and then it was Reddick and someone. I feel like there was another one in between there. At least 3 times in a row, we saw those guys get to victory lane. That was what was interesting. Brian in the chat saying as well that it was delayed from rain, cold weather, tires cording. A lot happened in spring Kansas, and that's true. And one thing that also happened when we look at spring Kansas was Noah Gragson. Noah Gragson started in the 3rd position, finished in 9th, and that's going to be a potential position prompt for me when I look at him at plus 390 on FanDuel. Decent odds as we can see. I know that team's been struggling a little bit, but the the thing that kind of catches my eye is the thing that I heard about SHR, in the fact that the 10 car and all their setups and everything that they've been doing is structured for the 14 to benefit off of it. So they're just sharing data completely. And oh, there we go. Ryan saying that he bet Noah Gragson 390 top 10 as well. So that literally makes me feel great, because that was who I was thinking about. That gets reassured. And that was my play, because if there's any tracks that we've seen the 10 car of Noah Gragson be strong at, it was Vegas. Some strong speed at Michigan as well. And these are tracks that are all comparable to Kansas. And I will say this too, when I think of drivers that are really strong at getting the most speed off of corner entry, corner exit, ripping the high line, ripping the fence, as you will, the 10 car, or at least Noah Gragson specifically, has been one of the best throughout his time in Xfinity Series. And now we see him at the Cup level doing it pretty well compared to the other drivers like Larson, Hamlin, Bell, that are all really strong at doing that and running the high line there. Phil, do you have any more position props for us here in this one?
No, I'm trying to think about what I'm going to throw in the best value. So I might have to save a couple of these later. I don't know which one I'm going to play, but yeah, nothing for me right now.
Okay, all right, all good there. Dale, how about you? And I want to give another shout out to the chat here. Chat, if you guys got anything for us, be sure to comment it down below so we can answer all of your questions. But Dale, any more position prompts for you out there? I love the suspense that comes with it every time we ask him. As we wait for Dale to figure out the unmute button again, Ryan, anything from you guys? I know I stole your Noah Gragson pick, which was awesome for me there. What else are you guys thinking over there at Win the Race? Anything?
Not for position props. I was close. When I picked Bubba, I was kind of between that and Kyle Busch, and it was the same line. It was plus 100. So I don't know. I still might bet the Kyle Busch one. I hate it, kind of bets against yourself a little bit, but I might still do it. But I was very close on Kyle Busch top 10.
I can talk to that maybe later.
Awesome. All right. And now Dale's unmuted. Here we go.
Yeah.
Anything from you, buddy?
No, nothing else for me on positional props right now. I think I like the idea of getting some of the values early. Like, it's just, I feel like I've had more success recently, just as a piece of advice. And this is just, maybe it's a me thing just in these past few weeks, but waiting has been good for me because, throughout the summer, I feel like I got really, really hot and heavy on some of these opening lines. And, you're thinking about is closing line value. And then you look up and you've already put down 6-7 units and nobody's even hit the track yet. So I think it's good to kind of wait on some of these positionals, see what happens in practice, see what happens in qualifying. So for those reasons, I got nothing else right now on positional props.
Well, stay unmuted. Oh yeah,
I can second that, because since we had the 2-week break, so since the Olympic break, I've been trying to do the same thing, and it's been much, much better. So way more successful waiting and just being patient. So if I throw early week stuff down, maybe it's a matchup or two, or a long shot. But other than that, I'm kind of waiting it out. So great advice from Dale.
Awesome. And I was mentioning there to potentially stay unmuted, as we'll go to you first, Dale, as you are our special guest for this weekend, for some outright bets in this one. We alluded to some drivers earlier on, and chat, this is the moment you've all been waiting for here. We got 189 current viewers. Appreciate that, guys. Everyone tuning in. That's awesome to see. So if you have any potential questions for Dale, Ryan, Phil, or me here, be sure to comment it down below. Let us know who you think is going to win the race in this one, as Dale's going to tell us some of his favorite picks to win this one right about now.
All right. So when it comes to the favorites, same kind of concept. I'm going to wait. I mean, when it came to Bristol, it's going to be different because of practice and qualifying format. We're not going to get the really long practice that we love to see. That actually gives us a little bit more accurate representation of who might be fast and who may not be. Kyle Larson was top of the charts in lap averages last week, and that definitely stuck out. So you're going to miss a little bit of that for Kansas this weekend, even though the on-track time will help you, I think, to some degree. With that being said, all the favorites, I'm going to wait. We're going to wait and we'll see what's going to happen with practice and qualifying. I think there's potential for guys like you guys talked about. Denny Hamlin has not qualified well here recently. Kyle Larson's very capable of making a mistake in qualifying. I think William Byron made a big mistake in his qualifying lap in the spring earlier this year too, and he had a good car, and he's typically really fast here. So anything can happen in practice and qualifying for your favorites. Let's just wait and see. I don't think you're going to lose a lot of value on some of your favorites heading into the weekend. So let's stick with some of the underdog guys. Kyle Busch, Ross Chastain. I'm on both of them this weekend. Kyle Busch was really good here in the spring. He had a very, very fast car. And when you look at that 8 car, since Tyler Reddick had it before Kyle Busch hopped in 2023, car has been good here. I think for that reason, not just for race trim, but practice and qualifying, maybe Kyle Busch could be a good candidate to win the pole as well, because that car has been good in every single session throughout race weekends at Kansas. It's just about, can Kyle Busch finish? So getting a 25-1 ticket on Kyle Busch via BetMGM could be a good ticket heading into the weekend. Very low risk. And then Ross Chastain, I know Phil talked about him with the top 10 line, 30-1 over on FanDuel Sportsbook, I think is a good line for a guy on a team that has brought speed to Kansas and has brought speed to the intermediates. My only concern with Chastain and just Trackhouse, they just have not had the long run speed they had last year or in 2022 for the most part. And I think that was an issue earlier this year at Kansas, even though he led a bunch of laps early on, just kind of didn't have the long run speed that the Toyotas or that Kyle Larson had, or even Chris Buescher for that matter. So 30-1, once again, low risk. If he qualifies up in the top 3, like he did here in the spring, that 30-1 line could be gone. So I like sprinkling on a couple of the underdogs. Crazy to say that they're both underdogs when you consider they won 4 combined races last year, and then Chastain had a great 2022 as well. Been a down year. Beardless Ross Chastain kind of scares me, makes me not want to bet on him as much. So we're going to keep it low on the unit count. But Ross Chastain, Kyle Busch, both very, very good race cars multiple times here at Kansas in the Gen 7 era. So that's where I'm going on outright bets before we hit the racetrack.
Love it there. And I think that your whole breakdown kind of alludes to Big Ross's question, or answers Big Ross's question rather, in terms of him asking what percentage are you guys pre-practice and qualifying versus post-practice and qualifying there, waiting for the potential closing line value or waiting for the value of the favorites. Like you mentioned, we see now Larson and Hamlin specifically plus 400, plus 550, both of them in that range. If one of them, like specifically Denny, doesn't qualify inside the top 10, and we know he can still, like for instance, started Kansas in the spring in 14th, finished in 5th, and obviously could have potentially won that race, as it was a battle between him and Buescher before that caution came out and the fuel was running out for those guys there. So yeah, I think I love that terminology and everything you mentioned there in terms of answering Big Ross's question too, in terms of what we can get before practice and qualifying and where we'll go after, especially at this type of racetrack. So Phil, how about you there? Who are you thinking about in terms of the drivers that could potentially win this race for us outright here?
Yeah, I thought Dale did a great job kind of covering some of those guys who were further down the list. As we were getting to the outright section, I was kind of cruising through, trying to see if I could find anyone that made sense to me. He kind of touched on a couple of those guys. So I'll go back up to more of the chalky pick. I like Tyler Reddick this weekend. He's plus 850 on FanDuel, and Tyler is someone that I really do believe we're going to get some closing line value on if we take him earlier in the week, because his qualifying statistics at Kansas are very good. I think he's like third, like 5.6 average starting position, and that's including a 15th from earlier this year, and also qualifying really well on the mile and a halfs this season. He's got a second place, an 8th, and a 4th on those 5. So he's someone that I could see putting the car top 5, and then that 850 goes away because the books are going to adjust to him because he's fast, and for all the reasons I'm about to mention here. In addition to his fast starts at Kansas, he has a win. It came last fall, playoff race, 2 top 10s. He finished 20th in the spring. I was looking at that too. I was going back like, what the hell did I miss? Why were did something happen to him? I was cruising through the race and they just weren't fast. So I fully believe that Toyota and 2311, who has won 3 of the last 5 races here, will adjust and figure out and learn what they did wrong to try to, get him, because he's their guy right now, back up in it. He's clearly someone that, has the ability to run well here. And looking at those 5 comps from 2024, he is the best average finish, 6.4. He's got the second best speed rating behind one Kyle Larson, who I think we all agree is going to be a big dog this weekend. So Red Dog, I think, is going to be right there nipping at his heels. And, 850, like I said, it's the opposite of Denny. It's you want to take Reddick now because I think he just qualifies well and that number disappears.
Love it there. And I think that's the most important thing that we're trying to find is that closing line value. Ryan, you guys over there Win the Race, I feel like do an awesome job at helping us find that type of value each and every week. What are you guys thinking in terms of any outright plays, or are you going to lean on potentially waiting on all these, picks or bets after practicing qualifying?
Yeah, this is a wait and see, I think, for us. But I do have my own little bomb that I threw here. Someone that you had mentioned earlier, and we're both on his top 10. But I like a little 90-1 Noah Gragson. Just a bomb. You don't need to throw much on this to have some fun with it. But you had mentioned, where he qualified before. If he qualifies anywhere near there, this number is cut in half. If it's not cut in half by race weekend, anyways. Because I don't really see a huge difference between him and Briscoe. And when the lines first opened, there's two that I can think of off the top of my head, what I would consider sharp bettors that I'm friends with that told me they bet Briscoe at 60-ish to 1. And I like that number for him. But it got me digging a little bit. And then while I'm digging, I'm like, damn, like Noah Gragson shouldn't be where he is. And that 390 top 10 and the 90-1 outright just seems off. Then Joe runs the Sims, and the Sims also agree that there's value on both numbers. I think we have fair like 310 on the top 10, and I forget what it is for the outright, but he has top 10s at Vegas, Dover, Kansas, which that's where we're at, Nashville, Indy. He's got a couple close ones, 14th at Darlington, 12th at Michigan, 12th last week just at Bristol, showed some speed there. He's always hanging around. It's a good track for him. He once beat Kyle Busch in the trucks here. There's just some good times here at Kansas for Gragson, and at 90-1, why the fuck not?
Yes, sir. Love it there for Noah Gragson. Could he potentially surprise us all in this one? A little Ryan bomb action here from Win the Race, a little Win the Race bomb. I got one for you guys, and we're talking about closing line value. Well, how about closing line Bell? That's Christopher Bell, 13-1. He has 3 poles in the last 5 races at this track. To me, if you're gonna find closing line value, it's gonna be from the pole sitter. 13-1, I could see that being cut down, especially at a track like Kansas. Now, it's all about finishing the race if you want him to win it. That makes sense here. He's finished 6th, 8th, 36th, 3rd, and 5th in those 5 races I've mentioned, but at the same time has also led laps in all of those last 5 at this track. To me, it's the poles that stand out in this one, and it's the fact that when Christopher Bell is in the playoffs, he just seems to turn things on just a little bit more. I think that team is going to do that at this track in this round, and the fact that he is very strong at ripping the high line is another instance where I could see him really succeeding here. But then we take a look at the comp tracks too. Vegas potentially was close to winning at a couple of times in the past few races there. Michigan, he showed a lot of speed there earlier on in the race this season before getting involved in that big wreck. So Christopher Bell would be the driver along with Tyler Reddick, like Phil mentioned, that I would grab before practicing qualifying here to win the race in this one. And now it's time to take a look at some of our best values. If you guys in the chat have any more comments, any questions about who to play for this one, anything you just want to say, be sure to get it in now before we close out the show after our best values segment here. And Phil, we'll start with you here for this one.
Well, I'll keep it brief. I could go a number of different ways, but you know what? I'm just going to say Denny Hamlin, top 5. It's minus 115 on Bet Rivers right now. That number, I think you might be able to snag it at plus 100. 100% hit rate at Kansas in the next gen car. I don't really need to speak too much more about his prowess here. He's legit. I think it's just like what we said last week with Larson, a top 5 bet for someone who potentially could go out and dog walk the field. Minus 115 even. If that number doesn't change, I still like it. So I'll keep it quick. 100% hit rate on a bet. I'll take it every time.
Awesome. Dale, to you now. What's your best value that you've seen throughout this potential, card that you're building for Kansas in this one?
I got two that I really like the Tyler Reddick plus 850 on FanDuel. That is, to me, a great line if you just forget about what happened in the spring. There were some, as said in the chat, there were some different elements that kind of made that race a little bit different compared to other Kansas races we've had in the Gen 7 era. Outside of that race, 23-11, Tyler Reddick been lights out at Kansas at this particular track type. This is when it all matters. So I think Tyler Reddick, this is a big time year for him to be poised to make a championship 4 run, as good as he's been on a variety of different racetracks. So another guy that could qualify really, really well, practice well, and then that plus 850 line could be gone. So not too chalky, but I think could be worth a pre-practice, pre-qualifying bet. And then Chris Buescher, man, I keep just coming back to Chris Buescher. I just don't understand why the books continue to fade him. I know Bristol wasn't great. Maybe there's some recency bias. He's not in the playoffs. You get to this time of year, and the books typically juice up everybody that's still remaining in the playoffs. Chris Buescher is not. But, I mean, so close to winning here in the spring. Both RFK cars were pretty damn good on the long run. And I love the fact – I just love the energy. I love the fact that Chris Buescher could play spoiler throughout all the playoff races. Been so close to winning so many times this year, and finally got the win at Watkins Glen. Been good at a variety of different racetracks, and you just never know when he's going to be a front runner. And Kansas is a track where he's proven that he can be. And I think there's a good shot that he'll be up there towards the end on Sunday afternoon. And, you know, I went with Reddick first just because this may not be a best value, because it seems like no matter what happens in practice and qualifying, which Buescher is not the best at qualifying, maybe there's a best value to be had after practice and qualifying if he doesn't qualify up in the top 15, up in the top 20. So I'm kind of fighting with myself on this one, but you know, getting Chris Buescher, a guy that's been capable of winning multiple races this year at multiple different track types, 20-1 or better, I always will look at as a good value.
Yes, sir. Definitely think the same there, especially with Tyler Reddick too at plus 850. I was looking at him there to say the same, but for him in the top 5 at Bet Rivers or Bet MGM, we're looking at plus 100 to plus 120. I think if we're thinking he's going to win the race at plus 850, I love the value there for Reddick for a top 5 at plus money. Ryan, to close us out.
Phil.
Yeah, yes, sir. Phil in the chat there. And Ryan, what do you guys think over there at Win the Race for your best values to close us out here?
Man, I kind of indirectly gave him out because I was kind of saving that Noah Gragson top 10 for the end here. So I got nothing. I gave it all out. That's where I'm at. Bet Noah Gragson. I'll have some fun with it. I think everything that Dale and Phil said, I agree with all of it. Great conversation tonight. And I'm excited to, it was fun being at the race last weekend, but I'd be lying if I said I don't look forward to sitting in that chair over there and watching this race this weekend. So it'll be fun.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate everyone for tuning into the NASCAR Betting Preview Show. Everyone in the chat, from Big Ross to Brian and Polar Knights here, saying I'm going to my first NASCAR soon, but I need to get a good mullet first to blend in. I mean, yeah, I think that's a great choice. As Dale and I are representing the mullet community here in this one. Ryan, we'll start with you. Where can people find you at and access all the Win the Race data that you have to offer in order to win the race at Kansas this weekend?
Yeah, it's just wintherace.info. If you're playing, daily fantasy on FanDuel or DraftKings, or you're betting, or you just want to geek out on some stats, we got it all. Wintherace.info. It's half off your first week or first month whenever you sign up through the rest of the year. So hope to see you in there.
Awesome. Phil, what about you? You got the full tank. Well, where can we find it at this weekend for Kansas and everything that you guys have to offer there?
Yeah, you can give me a follow at Full Tank Phil, Instagram and on X, and Full Tank with Phil's name of the podcast every week. Doing the cup picks out there. And thanks to you, Tino, again, hosting, and Ryan and Dale for coming on. Always a great time. One of the best in the business for sure. So this was a fun episode, and looking forward to seeing how it unfolds this weekend.
Yes, sir. And now to Dale Tanhart, like Phil said, one of the best in the biz. Thank you so much again for joining us here on the NASCAR Betting Preview Show. You got a lot going on, so where can everyone tune in to everything you got to offer on all your platforms this weekend as we head to Kansas?
Yeah, thank you guys, Ryan, Phil, Tino, for having me back on. This is a great operation, and always nice to be convinced to maybe take a bet from somebody else on the panel. So at Dale Tanhart everywhere. This will be the smartest you ever hear me speak, and probably the smartest you'll ever see me in appearance as well. But everything at Dale Tanhart, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Kick for iRacing streams. Which I'll be kicking, no pun intended, kicking one up tonight here after this. But yeah, thanks again, guys. Always fun to chop it up, and hopefully everybody has a profitable betting weekend. If not, hopefully we'll have just a fun racing weekend in general. With all the complaints we had at Bristol, I expect it to be the opposite when we get to Kansas this weekend. So thanks again, guys.
Yes, sir. Thanks for joining us. Everyone in the chat, it was so awesome to see you guys. Chat was on fire. Viewers, most we've had thus far since I've been the host, so appreciate you guys tuning in. Really awesome to see. We do the NASCAR Betting Preview Show each week, starting from 8 p.m. and going on until about 9 here. So I'm Tino Patino, the host. You can find me at Tino, Pattigno, on this show on Front Stretch Through the Gears, my own NASCAR betting podcast. You can hear me on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio as I do live spots for them. Some pre-recorded segments also to hear my best bets and the full betting card, everything we discussed in this episode. Auto Racing Digest, a little writing there, and as well as Sports Wrap with Jason Page and everything there for in between media as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing you guys next week, making some money here, and I appreciate everyone for tuning in as we get locked and loaded for Kansas. We'll see you guys next week on the NASCAR Betting Preview Show.